Okay, let's try a quick thought experiment together to kick off this explainer. I want you to imagine waking up tomorrow morning without an alarm. There's no phone vibrating on your nightstand, you don't hear any traffic outside, and there's absolutely no morning commute to dread. Instead, you just open your eyes to the soft, gray light of dawn filtering into a rock shelter. The air is cool, it's crisp, and it carries this really rich scent of wood smoke and damp earth. Well, this is exactly how humans woke up for hundreds of thousands of years. We're going back 40,000 years, and while you're anatomically identical to a modern human, your daily reality, how you actually spend your 24 hours, is about to look incredibly different from what we're used to today.
And this brings us to a central mystery that keeps anthropologists just endlessly fascinated. What did early humans actually do all day? I mean, think about it. When there are no jobs to clock into, no utility bills to pay, no grocery runs to make, how does a human being actually fill a 24-hour day? It's a question that completely challenges all of our preconceived notions about how our ancestors lived.
But here is the ultimate plot twist. We all have this image burned into our brains from the movies, right? The brutish Hollywood caveman who is just locked in this constant, desperate struggle for survival, always starving, frantically running away from saber-toothed tigers, and fighting in these chaotic daily mammoth hunts. Well, the archaeological reality tells a radically different story. Early humans actually enjoyed abundant leisure time. They developed incredibly rich cultures, and get this, they experienced workdays that lasted only about 4 to 6 hours. They weren't just barely surviving, they were truly living.
Let's dive into part 1. Dawn. Waking up slowly. As consciousness slowly returns with the lightening of the sky, and you hear the stirring of people around you, you realize you haven't just woken up from a solid 8-hour block of sleep. Early humans actually practiced what scientists call biphasic sleep. It's this completely natural cycle involving 2 distinct periods of rest, separated by a wakeful interval right in the middle of the night. And during that wakeful period, people wouldn't just toss and turn. They'd talk quietly, check on the kids, and tend to the campfire. Most importantly, this staggered sleep schedule meant that at any given moment during the night, someone was always awake, listening for the footfalls of predators. Their safety was quite literally maintained hour by hour through vigilance and deep cooperation.
Moving into part 2, morning, the real Paleolithic diet.
So as that morning chill fades, your stomach is definitely going to start rumbling. Early humans were incredible opportunists. They had no set meal times, no stocked pantries. A flexible breakfast might literally just be a strip of leftover deer meat from 2 days ago, a handful of dry blackberries, and some starchy cattail roots that had been slow roasting in the embers all night. And to feed the camp for the rest of the day, you might assume they just grabbed their spears and went straight for a mammoth. But think again, a massive 60 to 80% of their daily calories actually came from gathered plants. Roots, tubers, nuts, seeds, and berries, that's what reliably kept early humans alive, while hunted meat made up a surprisingly small slice of their overall diet.
So the takeaway here is absolutely crucial. Gathering was the rule, and hunting was the exception. A successful hunt was this occasional super high-stakes endurance event that took immense coordination and honestly ended in failure a lot of the time. Gathering, on the other hand, that was the reliable, daily, highly specialized work. The gatherers walked miles every single day, reading the landscape like a deeply familiar book, relying on an encyclopedic knowledge of hundreds of different plant species just to keep the group fed.
All right, part 3, midday, the 4-hour workday.
By the time the sun is high in the sky, we enter the actual workday. This is when the crucial subsistence activities happen. The gathering we just mentioned, tracking animal signs, and maintaining the camp. And here is a number that is just wild to think about today. 4 to 6. Anthropological data shows us that early humans only spent 4 to 6 hours a day working on these tasks. Once the day's food was secured and their tools were maintained, they were completely done. Which means early humans basically had more free time in a single week than most modern humans get in an entire month. No way, right? But please do not mistake those short working hours for simple, mindless labor. The work they did required unbelievable skill. Take crafting a tool, for instance. You would have to expertly strike a flint core to detach a razor-sharp blade, meticulously carve a hardwood handle, heat up pine resin mixed with charcoal to create this prehistoric superglue, and then bind the whole thing tightly with dried sinew. This complex, rhythmic, midday work wasn't just a chore. It required decades of accumulated knowledge that was passed down from generation to generation. Which brings us to part 4. Afternoon. The invention of leisure. So what in the world did our ancestors do with all that unstructured, unscheduled time? Well, they spent it in surprisingly modern ways. They gossiped, which, as it turns out, is a totally vital ancient survival tactic critical for keeping the group together. They played games with carved bone toys, they made music using these delicate ivory flutes, they spent time grooming each other for hygiene and social bonding, they decorated their skin with red ochre pigment, and honestly, they spent long, quiet hours just cloud watching and observing their environment. Play and observation weren't just lazy distractions. They were actual, practical survival tools that sharpened their intuition about the natural world.
And all of this leisure time, all this skill specialization, it was all made possible by something called cooperative breeding. This is a brilliant social system where multiple adults, not just the biological parents, care for the same children. In a Paleolithic camp, the phrase, "it takes a village," wasn't some heartwarming metaphor. It was literally a job description. This deep community safety net ensured that a child would survive even if a parent was injured or absent, and it completely freed up the other adults to master complex skills like tool-making and tracking.
Part 5. Dusk, the evening fire. As the afternoon shadows stretch out and the sun dips lower, the open landscape suddenly becomes very dangerous. In response, the entire 30-person band contracts inward toward the ultimate prehistoric center of gravity, the evening fire. And it wasn't just there to keep them warm, it was basically a multi-purpose survival tool. For nutrition, it acted as a kitchen for roasting meat and breaking down tough plant toxins. For defense, it was a literal protective boundary that kept out predators like hyenas and lions. And for society, it served as a prehistoric courthouse. Sharing the evening meal was a grand performance of generosity, and that fireside chatter was where gossip mediated conflicts and kept the peace, because in a small group like that, you simply couldn't afford to hold a grudge.
It was around that fire where the group's culture truly came alive, as this quote perfectly captures. Without writing, without records, stories are the memory of the group. Campfire storytelling wasn't just for entertainment. It was the absolute critical transmission of life or death ecological data, like remembering which specific valley floods during the spring rains. And it was also how you tracked everyone's social credit score. The stories told around those glowing embers literally held the group's collective knowledge.
Part 6. Night. Sleeping under the stars. Eventually, the stories wind down, the flames drop back to glowing coals, and everyone settles onto these meticulously layered beds of dry grasses, aromatic plants, and animal hides, which was a very necessary barrier against the cold, damp earth. But falling asleep didn't mean they were completely vulnerable. Right after sunset, the perimeter was cleared and the fire was built up. About 4 hours later, those biphasic sleepers we talked about earlier would wake up naturally to tend the embers. And then, deeper into the night, my favorite part, a vital new partnership emerged with early domesticated dogs. These slightly tamer wolves slept right at the edge of the firelight, and their twitching ears acted as a biological early warning system against any distant threats lurking in the dark.
And even while their physical bodies rested, we know from the archaeological record that these early humans were exploring vast, incredible inner lives. Deep underground, completely cut off from the light of day, they painted breathtaking cave art. They crafted those bone flutes to synchronize their breathing and movements during ritual trances. Through early spirituality and art, they were busy creating profound, lasting meaning out of raw survival. Finally, Part 7. The next dawn. What have we lost? As the stars wheel across the sky and bring us back to the next dawn, it's time to pull ourselves out of that 40,000-year-old rock shelter and snap back to our modern reality. Because studying our past like this reveals a profound paradox of progress. Think about it. Prehistoric humans were materially poor, sure, but they were incredibly wealthy in unstructured time and deep, supportive community. We modern humans, on the flip side, are materially wealthy, yet we're so often exhausted, isolated, and just chronically time poor. We built all these brilliant modern machines to supposedly free up our time, only to fill our 24 hours right back up with nonstop noise, glowing screens, and endless scrolling. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought to end our explainer today. In our modern rush for progress, what essential human rhythms have we left behind? Because the truth is, our nervous systems are still completely calibrated for small communities, for days governed by the path of the sun, and for those quiet moments just staring into a fire. Thank you so much for exploring this with me. I really hope it gives you something fascinating to think about the next time you set your morning alarm.